Hey guys, Lincoln Wright here with Paint on Plastic. I'm going to take you through how I quickly achieved the super smooth and clean white on these Tau Empire stealth suits using an airbrush. For priming, I used the new Sparmax Flyer and Ammo's one-shot primer. For the white armor, I used the Sparmax Airism Viz compressor and their SP20X. It's a 0.2mm airbrush. The paint recipe included Ammo by MiG 059 Grey and satin white, along with their branded airbrush thinner. Priming. Now the first step when working with water-based acrylics is to prime our miniatures. This is an important step as it gives our subsequent paint layers something to grip onto, otherwise they can peel off. This time I've gone with one-shot black and literally blasted it on with a Flyer spray gun. I like the one-shot primer, it's water-based and non-toxic, and quite forgiving to use. Yes, it looks terrible, I'm blasting it on here, but as you can see with the finished miniatures, it snugs down tightly to the surface, and I don't feel I have lost any detail. You will see in many of my other tutorials that I am also a fan of rattle cans, particularly for priming. It's fast, with little to no setup or cleanup. However, there is one decided downside in that sometimes we miss spots. When priming like this with an airbrush, there is the peace of mind that we have entirely primed our miniature. And there we go, even after blasting it on like this, one-shot primer snugs down tight. Big fan! On to the colors. Next, let's build up from black to white with an interim stage of grey. A slightly bluish grey in this case, Ammo Grey 059, that will also feature on our finished model to help give them a cold tone. The cold tone will also contrast against the warm detail and weathering colours I've used. I've mixed my paint in roughly a 50-50 ratio with airbrush thinner. The accuracy and fine lines this airbrush can produce are most impressive, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity of doing more detail work with it, like fine post shading and weathering effects in future tutorial videos for you. Here I am much more careful, measured and precise. The 0.2mm airbrush allows me much greater accuracy than the 0.3mm I use for larger models, and I'm able to highlight the armor areas whilst leaving the shadows and areas that will be dark armor on the model mostly black. It's a cool effect and feeling to do it. It was quite fun. As a technique note, I'm being mindful of the way light will fall on our miniature to help improve the illusion that it is lit from directly above, from what is known as a zenithal light source. For the armor panels that will be directly in this light, I am making sure to build up a solid opaque grey. Already the miniature is starting to take shape and look quite cool. The armor is smooth and tight. Next, let's go for our final color, satin white. I chose satin to match the sheen of my ghost keel, and I personally feel it gives armor a nice high-tech look. Again, I've mixed my paint in roughly a 50-50 ratio with airbrush thinner. No, this is not strictly necessary as these paints are designed to be airbrush ready, so please let me mention my reasons. First, the smaller airbrush needle size of 0.2mm tends to need thinner paints. It's easier to block if we aren't careful. Reason number 2 is because I haven't painted small miniatures in a really long time, I'm being extra careful to apply thin paint and would rather apply more careful coats than just blast on the final colors and mess it up. And reason number 3, I want the paint to be slightly translucent and not appear pure white, but an ever so slightly off-white so that I can still highlight it for further effects in the hand painting stages. Here I continue the work and methodology from the grey steps, now being even more selective in only highlighting the uppermost surfaces that will be close to pure white, leaving the grey areas as shadows and trying to avoid the areas that will remain black. You can see that with the accuracy of the small needle airbrush, I can place the white quite precisely and leave the previous steps visible in the panel lines. No, it's not necessary, but it's fun to do, and I somehow feel like I'm saving myself work in later steps. Please take your time with this step and also keep my mantra of start loose and finish tight in mind. Primer can be loose, it's all one color, slightly tighter with the grey to block in the armor, and now we go around carefully and systematically highlighting our armor up to full brightness. As I've heavily thinned the paint, it did take a few passes to come up to full brightness, but I feel it was worth the end result. Just as an aside, whilst I work, the reason I went with 3 miniatures instead of just the one was to practice a lesson taught to me by Koyo Koyama sensei. He would say, if you're going to paint one figure, paint 2 or 3 at the same time. You will learn more from each and can apply it back to each of them in turn, accelerating your learning experience. I must say that doing each step 3 times across these miniatures in fact was a huge learning experience for me, and I am eternally grateful for his guidance. If I paint more miniatures like this, I might become brave and use thicker paint, but maybe also no. Safe and steady to hopefully avoid epic fails that might take longer to recover from. And there we go, a beautifully clean, highlighted and shaded white armor base to start our hand painting stages from. Cool, hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and that concludes the basic section of the tutorial. I'll also upload 2 long-form videos to my Patreon shortly, covering the rest of the hand painting and 100% acrylic weathering steps for the intermediate level tutorial, and then an advanced level tutorial covering my OSL, Object Source Lighting experiments. Last thing, a question. What should I add next to the Tower Army I don't know I'm collecting yet? Thanks guys, more soon. Check out our Facebook group. Friendly tips and advice. Big thanks to Hobbyco and Little Robot. I do my best to buy from and support local to keep our money in our communities and to empower events. Super big thank you and shout out to my top supporters: Ivan, MB, Grant, Con, Jack, RJ, Robert, Kelso, Kevin, David, Nilos, and Derek. Thanks guys. This episode was supported by our patrons. Your support empowers me and makes all this happen. Thanks guys.